Well, guys, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time off from your busy day to come here to the Dani Ariza podcast. And this is officially episode 3 of the second season.
Nice.
Yeah,
Second season.
the second season, because there was a first season. I think that joke is gonna get
More
old
legit
pretty.
now.
Yeah, it's gonna get old pretty soon because I've used it in every single episode now. But today I'm here with Pete and Ashley Kopec, right? And is that how you say Kopec
Yep,
or
Kopec, you
yeah,
nailed it.
Kopec.
Nailed
yeah.
it.
Where's that from? Is that like
Polish.
Polish? Okay,
yeah.
Perfect.
Colombian.
Yeah, definitely not Colombian.
You didn't notice?
And I'm also with my partner Scott Cummings.
Yep.
Very happy to be here.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
man.
having us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'll start right off the bat. I mean, you guys are married. You guys are both real estate agents. You have a team. Like, how did this come about? Like, what made you go into business together? Because that's always a little tough one. I feel like, for me at least.
Well, so I guess I'll start because my journey kind of started a little bit earlier than Ash's did in real estate. So, my family grew up in the mortgage industry. Well, growing up, my parents were in the mortgage industry, right? So they owned and operated Liberty Mortgage down in Little Lake Harbor. Shout out to that old office. So real estate was kind of just always a topic of conversation. It was always like my mom and dad were talking about. I didn't really understand it at the time, but there was always those kind of conversations. So my parents being entrepreneurial in spirit, I think was always kind of in the back of my head. So in high school and like out of high school, I knew I wanted to own properties. And so after kind of high school, I kind of got into just some blue collar work, some retail, different things until eventually I found my way. And I just said, you know what, I'm tired of working with my back and working for other people. So I was like, I'm going to work for myself. I went and I got my real estate license, and that was going on 10 years ago now, which is pretty wild.
Wow.
And we, fortunate to kind of have this continual growth. Hasn't been like, sometimes you get concerned when it's like 2 years look really good and then another year's off. So we've had continual growth. And then we got to the point where I thought it made sense for Ashley to come on board. And then she joined us.
That's great. And Ashley, what do you used to do before?
So I was a graphic designer in corporate for, about 20 years. And I got to a point where I was no longer growing in that position. So I was getting miserable. We were going through, COVID, and it was kind of brutal. And then Pete comes downstairs one day after I get off a very tense meeting, and he's like, what if we went into real estate together? And I was like, you're crazy. Like, no way, but like, give me more information.
But I'm curious.
Yeah. So we kind of talked through a bunch of it, and we're kind of like, well, what could it hurt?
Yeah, it's amazing how that stuff happens, because it's just a quick story, just not to like go off on another one.
Your
but,
podcast, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
no,
talk
no,
about
Do
it.
whatever you
but,
want.
but I mean, the story. But basically, like, I used to work at a big bank, and one day I was like, I got myself all suited up because I wanted a promotion, and I was like, I've been here for a while. I need this. Got myself. I'm not a big watch guy, but I do have a tag here. Okay.
There you go.
And
Shout out
so
tag.
I actually that day I put the nice suit and my
Nice
tag
watch,
here.
yeah.
Is that how you say tag here?
Yeah, you're saying it fine.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, bottom line was that I was expecting to have a conversation with the superiors about the promotion. They didn't even pay attention to me. And immediately, like that day, I was like, go to my wife. I was like, screw it.
I think I got a phone call
Yeah.
next day.
Yeah. And I was like, and my wife was like, you know what? F those people. They're just going to another direction. I support you. Then I called this guy immediately. I was like, you know what? We're going into mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's something to be said about corporate America. I think that it fits the mold of a lot of people. But when you have that entrepreneurial mindset, having to report to somebody that has to report to somebody else, you're 5 steps, from anybody that's a real decision maker. So
Yep.
creating your own destiny could certainly be done in this industry.
Yeah, and I think that brings it back to like a lot of agents, and like we pretty much everyone in this business is in it, mostly, or a lot of times is because you want some independence. You want to be able to, like, hey, if I'm not growing, let me do this to grow. you know. So to follow up on that, like, how has it been? I mean, when was this?
Yeah. So when did you come on
3
board?
years.
Yeah, it was about
It
3
was
years
3
ago
years this past month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Ash is great because, for a lot of reasons,
By
as
the
my
way, you
wife.
have to you have to
right?
say
Yeah,
that.
He
I-
does, and it's important that he does.
It's important that I say
Make
that.
sure you say the right thing.
No,
He's
but-
got a knife to his back.
In all seriousness, I mean, when she first came on board, like we kind of had this whole plan, and I think what was important that we kind of set those expectations from the beginning was like we're a husband and wife first, right? Like our personal life, the way we operate in our marriage is most important, and we said in no uncertain terms, like if you. I feel like I made it very clear that I was like, if you come on board and you're like, you know what, I hate this, I need this stability, or I don't like working with whatever it is. I was like, you're good to go. Like, don't feel like you have to do this just because we did this. So we kind of set out a plan and we had a vision that Ash was going to be more of the operations role. She was going to help us build out systems and processes and really enhance the client experience. So that way they, just were continually being communicated with and keeping the process going. And I was going to focus more on generating, clients, connecting with people, doing, kind of, and building relationships with agents too, other real estate agents, which I think is sometimes overlooked in the company, in the business. It's not just about how well you communicate with your clients or treat your clients. It's also, this business, there's a lot of licensed agents, and you guys probably know this, you see the same names coming up time and time again.
Quickly becomes a small industry.
And if you can reach out to another agent and they're like, we have a deal now, where the agent was like, I see you guys all the time. Like, I know you guys are great. I can't wait to work with you. And that helped us get an offer accepted. So that's a huge plus. But, I would say, listen, being a husband and wife team, there are definitely challenges. Like there is no doubt about that. For us, it's always just been, I think the biggest thing is like, you fight clean, you don't take low blows. Like we have certain times where we know we have to shut it off when things are getting contentious, if we have differing opinions. But for us, it's always about being respectful and putting our marriage first, and certain things you can't ever take away. Like they come out in a moment of frustration or whatever it is. We're always very cognizant of like not crossing that line. Not that I think we've really,
Even in our marriage, we're good with that.
yeah,
We're
like
very good
I'm
with
making
that.
it sound like it's
Yeah.
just like we're just in this
No.
drama world all the time,
No.
but we're definitely not. And I think one of the pros, if I can, just while I'm talking about some of the challenges, is like I think a perfect example was like we were driving back from a meeting yesterday, which is cool that we get to do a lot of lunches and stuff together. And it was one of those nice warm days that we're having now,
Yeah,
like finally.
finally.
And Ash was like, let's just keep going south. And it was like half joking.
Made it to Cape May.
But
I don't know what happened. We're on the beach.
but the fun thing or the positive is like we could do that.
Yeah.
Like if we wanted to, like we don't have to call our supervisor and be like, hey, we're gonna like
Yeah.
we could be out. And I think that's one of the things we love the most about being like a husband and wife team.
And let me ask you, because that's probably like a double-edged sword though too, right? Where it's amazing that you guys can spend that time together, but how do you differentiate the time that you spend together being work related and like personal? Like you said like
So-
you got to shut off at some point.
We have a safe word
Okay.
for those situations.
Fair enough.
And it's tangerine,
Okay.
where when we're getting too like transactional or detail oriented in a situation that it's not time for.
Yeah, 'cause-
like when we're outside of like, work hours, whatever
Sure.
that looks like. Or if one of us is like burnt out on something or whatever, it's just like, okay, we gotta cut it and move it to tomorrow or whatever that looks like.
Because that's kind of the thing. I think I even try and distinguish like when I'm home, and that's why I try and go to the office as much as I can, because when I'm in the office, I'm focused, right? When I'm home, I don't want to be working. If I'm hanging with my wife, like I want to be separated from that. So I'd imagine that'd be a little bit of a challenge because you guys work together and then it's like, all right, like at 5 o'clock, do we stop or what's going on? So
Yeah, it's tough to. I don't know how actually like how people work from home. It's very difficult for me, and now like you see me in the office a lot more. But it's like I need to go into the office just to like be able to get away from everything because it's just so easy, Especially like unless you have like something separate in the house to just completely get
I'm
away.
the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I love working from home. And I think it's probably still PTSD from corporate where I had no choice. So now like to be able to be like, I'm going to work for the coffee shop this morning, or I am just going to stay home and work from the couch because I know I have design work ahead of me for 3 hours and I can just kind of find a little hole and I'm in that and I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
I think that for me is almost like still just I can do what I want in this world, you know, like I think that's just a
And
little
that's what you want
flex
to
that
do?
I get to have. Yeah. And
That's
that's what I
awesome.
want to, yeah, it doesn't bother me to do that.
There's also, you know, before as we were kind of like exploring this and stuff, our company are, you know, we're with Keller Williams and they have a thing called the KPA, which is like a personality assessment. It kind of like gives you an idea of where you would rank in a real estate like profession. And so actually when I was just reviewing it maybe a few weeks ago when we were doing a class in the office about hiring and getting the right people, right? Because it's about ultimately like our goal is to build an organization where we have people that can support all these different levels so that we can continue to grow without sacrificing quality to our clients and things like that. And one of the things that came up in Ash's KPA, which I didn't put a lot of weight into when we first took it, is that her personality style is like she prefers to be like give her the job that you need to do and just let her do it. Like don't ask her or try that you need to do it here, you need to do it there or whatever. And it's actually really funny because when you start like growing an organization, you start building things, you start doing these things, you're like, oh my gosh, there were people who came before me, right? And
Yeah.
there's a reason we take these personality tests or read these books or listen to these podcasts or whatever it is. And it was just kind of cool to see it like show up in that way.
Well, and the opposite for you is true too, where you thrive in environments where there's more people and there's stuff. My Italian hands are just, but when you like get more people around you and energy and all of that, and like that wears me down
Right.
and that energizes
Introvert,
you. It's
extrovert.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, you have to. I was talking to a CEO the other day of I mean, rather a small but big enough tech company, and he was telling me that's a huge challenge. And like he's forming a completely new team for a new project, and it's like he needs to make sure that the people are like he has somebody working on making sure that hey, are these people gonna work together correctly? Are these people gonna be able to just like keep reach that goal, right? And going back to like my wife, when I think about my wife is completely different than me, where I'm like more kind of like emotional, where it's like I need to have the urgency to do things. I'm like slow, and then it's like, oh crap, I gotta go and get this done, and boom, 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 and then I just kind of get on a rampage where like my wife is all disciplined. It's like, okay, 1, 2, 3,
Time blocking.
yeah, time blocking. It's like it's just difficult, but that's why when actually I remember when Scott mentioned that the two of you were gonna work together. I was like, that must be hard. I mean, you're just coming from a
Yeah. But at the same time, too, like I would even ask you, like in the past 3 years, what do you think you guys have been able to accomplish as a team that you weren't able to do on your own? Probably a lot, but
yeah, I mean, it's like
substantially different.
yeah, it's hard to even like answer that question because there's like even things that like it's not even necessarily like a do more. It's to me, my first thought is do better, right? Like the quality of things that go out, the quality of, I mean, honestly, and there's always like, I'd say one of the hardest things for me was two things. One, letting go of like certain things and understanding that other people can do them, and usually better. And two, that other people don't mind certain things. Like you have a task. Like when I say like, what do you hate to do the most, right? There's something that comes to your mind. And there's someone else in this world that doesn't mind. There's a type of person, a personality that doesn't mind doing that as much as we do, or you do, or you do, or whatever. So I think that was like something I had to realize. But Ash, as she's gotten more into her comfort zone, and I think has gotten more comfortable with the role, because getting into real estate or any new profession is challenging. It's been really cool to see her grow, but a lot of it has been, this is how I'll say it. Every time I go to a first showing with a new client, they say, "Where's Ashley?" So that's a good sign. That means it's working.
You're the one that's supposed to be building the relationships.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, and in this case, you complement each other.
Well, I would even say too, like having done several transactions with you guys, I think that a major value add that Ash is able to bring to the table too is the overall organization that she's able to keep you on track. Because Pete's like just a straight like visionary and pioneer. He's like, I got another idea. It's like, here we go now. And then they're all good ideas, but like,
Well,
you
come
know,
on, you don't have to be nice. They're not
Okay.
all good.
They're
but
mostly good
mostly
ideas.
good
They're
ideas.
mostly good
There's
ideas.
a lot
But-
of crappy ideas in there. 99, and there's one that makes
this is true. But Ash has a way of actually bringing things to life. Like it's like Pete's idea, and then it's like, all right, let's check with the boss though and see if this is really feasible. And then Ash kind of helps bring it to life. So I think that like a lot of the client events that we've been able to do are not possible without Ash. So real kudos to you on that.
It's difficult. I mean, talking about ideas and all of that, it's just difficult just to think about something and then go ahead and actually like
Yeah,
implement
to
it.
take the time to figure it out.
Like even like doing this podcast and stuff, like a lot of times I was like, because when I drive, I have to drive an hour.
Yep.
And that's where I'm like thinking my wheels are turning,
Yeah.
and then they go up in smoke,
Well, I think
But,
we all, especially as entrepreneurs, we all have to realize where our strengths are at and try to do as much in that. Like we were even talking before
Yeah,
we started,
off
right?
camera, yeah,
You were like, I love this stuff, and you're clearly good at it and hosting it, and you found yourself spending too much time in the nitty gritty part of it, right?
Yeah.
And there's other people who can do that for you, and that's where
Yeah.
you start to really take off, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, if you don't have somebody else who helps you, like it's hard to gain momentum.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
Mhm.
And sometimes we're so used to controlling things, or we're so used to thinking, we're so set on our ways, like, hey, I don't want to spend money because I'm thinking, it's hard for, and this kind of goes into like being an agent and just being an entrepreneur. But it's if you're not willing to spend the money, if you're not willing to hire people, if you're not willing to give up some control, it's hard to grow.
For sure.
100%.
And it just because you need the momentum. Like, look, this is the third episode this season, and I could see the momentum already.
Yeah.
And it's because I gave up some of the control of this, because I used to, like I was telling you, and for those who don't know, like I used to be a photographer, so I kind of like I'm always thinking, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and then I realized like, no, you can't.
Or
But
if you
should
can,
you?
you can't do it
Yeah.
as streamlined, and it
Right.
takes
Yeah.
away from the allure of it.
I could do it, like this is not an easy thing to put up, and like one thing, going back to like talking about like real estate agents and mortgages, like like I used to be a photographer, and it's very difficult to go from photographer, like it's a whole different thing being a photographer and doing video. It's like they're together, and some people can do both, but then at the same time it's the same thing. Hey, agent and mortgage.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to touch base on how, like, I guess what you guys are looking for in a mortgage, in a lender. And I know you have your favorite lender on this table, but like, what do you guys look for?
Can I take that?
Yeah, go for it.
So I look for communication. Somebody who is detail oriented and able to, pick up the phone and be transparent and be honest and just, kind of talk through what's going on and have updates when needed. And I think that's part of, Scott's strengths too. Like we are on the phone, a handful of times every week.
Right.
We're talking almost every day and going through everything that's happening.
Well, it's funny too, because like it's a very common question, and the answer is almost pretty steady no matter who you talk to. It's communication.
Yeah.
And I always joke, I'm like, so you want me to do my job? Fine. That's not difficult,
Yeah.
but you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
And same speaks for a good agent.
Yeah, you will be absolutely surprised how many horror stories we hear.
Yeah, I think, just I think it's important to be kind of side by side. Like I think a lot of times, like I feel like I have a partner, not just
Yeah.
somebody who like, I send business to. And then, I think when you can send business to somebody who, or just a referral in really any industry, it doesn't even necessarily matter. But knowing that like when you send it to them, you can trust them to follow up. That you can, for us, like our business is built by referral. Like we are a very relationship business. We're not cold calling. We're not, we maybe should be, depending on who you ask, maybe doing some more door knocking. But for us, it's a lot more relationship building, networking, and like taking care of our people. So if we send one of our people to a lender and they maybe feel like they're being pushed something, or, so it's one of the biggest things is like, one of the best things I ever learned was like, if somebody is ready to move now, like they're ready to do something tomorrow, and you're working at a pace where it's like, all right, I'll send this to you next week. And then, but like, you're going to lose that person, right? You're not communicating on their same level. The opposite is also true, right? If you're communicating super like, hey, cool, can I call you today? Can I call you tomorrow? Can I call you this? When is a good time? Like, and somebody's just kind of dipping their toe in the water, you're going to freak them out, and you're going to feel pushy. So I think knowing that you have somebody on the other end that you can kind of tee them up and be like, hey, this is their personality. This is my conversation with them. Here's how, that is a huge thing. And then obviously following through, being competitive and doing quality work is kind of goes, I think, without saying.
Yeah, and I look, this goes for every sales person out there, but it's about actually listening. I've been in the financial services industry for 20 years, and it's amazing how many people are in sales, especially in personal finances, where they just don't listen, where they're like, okay, yeah, but they're not actually listening and being like, trying to like understand the other person and being able to say, okay, this person is not really ready right now. Like this person is just, checking to see how things are. Or we're like, hey, this guy is ready to go. Like, or sometimes like this guy is kind of on the fence and I need to like, boom, push him,
Yeah.
and it's something that, especially when it comes to mortgages, we are, like I wouldn't say the most important part, but like we are the part where like people end up actually making the decision where like, hey, this makes sense or it doesn't make sense. And it's so important to have somebody, and Scott is really good at this, where it's like, look, this makes sense for you.
Yep.
And this is why it makes sense for you.
And for some people, it's I guess it's ultimately alignment too, like being aligned in how you service business. There's all different kinds of realtors and mortgage lenders. Some are churn and burn. They're just trying to do transactions. They, maybe care if it sees it to the end, maybe doesn't, whatever. Maybe we'll never talk to you again. And then there's others like, like I feel like we are, who are just, we want to be your realtors for life. We want to be your mortgage lender for life. And I think you're right. Listening is so important, because when somebody tells you like, hey, we're just kind of getting information, and you're like pushing something on them or not, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing too is like even, let's face it, buying a house is probably the biggest transaction of most people's lives. And it's great when they're able to kind of plug into a team that's already well-rounded and we all know how each other work too, right? You can get to the finish line if you find your own lender, find your own realtor, and, mix and match. And in many cases, it's fine. We do it too. But having somebody that trusts one person to then kind of enter your world with the people that you trust just makes it so much easier when half the time you're going through the transaction. Maybe the buyers don't even realize what's going on behind the scenes because it's all being taken care of because we're in constant communication.
Yeah,
So-
it's I'm going to do it right now, where like we just got an attorney review and I don't know the attorney. And it's been like a couple of days and this attorney hasn't done anything. And it's I'm sure he's very successful, but like I keep calling him and trying to like move things along, because I knew like that it was a difficult offer to get accepted. Yeah, it doesn't show
Nothing,
up.
right?
So it's in this business there's so many small parts, so many different individuals who don't really have to report to each one, that you need to be able to work together in order to move things.
The most important thing in any real estate transaction, without a doubt, is the team you put together. And I'm talking to the camera because I want that to be very clear. You don't find the house, and I mean, listen, some people have done this, investors, things like that, whatever. But putting together the house and then finding the team, I feel like it never works. It never works. You got to find the team, make sure they're people who you trust, and then you trust them to guide you through the process. I think that's one of the most important things you can do if you're looking to buy or sell a home.
100%.
It's
Doing
super
that
important.
backwards just creates unnecessary stress, and it's something that can already be stressful. It's just
I think those are the same people that probably
Yeah.
argue that this process is brutal, right?
right. Exactly.
Well, and I think it happens by mistake. People don't know where to go. They just, they see a house that's listed. It looks good. Maybe they called their bank and they got pre-approved for a number. And then they go to the house, and the next thing they know, they're under contract with a real estate agent, a mortgage lender,
Listing agent,
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the listing agent. And listen, sometimes that works out fine, but sometimes you find yourself where even if the listing agent is a good agent, you're still going to find yourself questioning their motives throughout the I feel. I mean, I could be wrong, but
It's almost impossible to not if
Yeah.
they already know the sellers.
yeah,
you
you're
know,
second guessing everything, and then when something comes up and they're trying to give you advice through the inspection process or the whatever, and you're kind of like, well, are they really where I find like if you do it the opposite and you put the team together first, no matter who it is, and you find you're like, okay, I feel good about them because you're kind of pre-qualifying and you're learning how that team is going to communicate with you in the beginning. If you set an appointment with an agent in the beginning and then they reschedule 4 times or they're not confirming or they're not like,
Yeah.
you're getting a good idea of how that entire process is going to go and then what's most likely going to look like after the fact. If you connect with an agent or a mortgage lender, whoever it is in the beginning, and they have a proven method, like you can feel that there's a process that they're going through, you have a good idea of what that's going to look like throughout the whole thing. And I think that that's something that people should look for when they're out there and they're thinking about
absolutely.
So I guess this question is for you, Ashley. So what would you say that it's your process when it comes to dealing with a client for both of you? Like, what makes it? I mean, I guess what would be your advice for other agents when it comes to like setting up a process? Like,
It's staying in touch. It's staying in touch and not, I try to be the one to reach out versus them having to come to me every time. Sometimes it, happens, or sometimes we're, even texting at the same time, where, I try to answer the question before the question's asked because I understand that, they're going to have so many questions. We do this every day. So there's some things that we need to try to anticipate for them because we know it. We take it for granted, some of these things that we just assume other people know because we're in the business, but they don't. And we have to make sure that we are going every step of the way with them and making them feel comfortable because this is the biggest thing, like you said, the biggest thing that they do.
For sure.
It's a huge process. It's nerve-wracking for a lot of people, and especially in a market like this. It's tough. So over communicating, unless they tell you to stop, over communicating is always positive.
yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I was just talking to Juan Pablo. He's part of our team and he's new to the team, and he was asking me why I was going to do all the numbers for like the third time with these client that should be closing next week. And the reason I was like, look, I need to make sure that she fully understands what she's paying for before some schmuck out there
Yeah.
comes out and tells them completely wrong information that's going to make me look bad and is going to put her in a bad mental situation. Like it's happens all the time where people, for example, like you're going to do a closing disclosure and there's a lot of loan officers out there who's like, oh, I don't want to mention points, because there's this stigma on it, right? And it's like, no, you know what? That's actually the part where, like, and I think you do it too, where I make sure to explain. I go like, look, this is why you're paying. This is why you're paying it. These are the options you have in order not to pay this. And the reason I say that is because definitely there's so much misinformation, especially on the internet, where it's gonna screw up a deal. Because people just, the uncle comes out of nowhere and be like, hey, you're getting robbed. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, you're not getting robbed. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right.
And then literally, like, I've seen it where people like you're like going crazy at the end of almost at the end of the transaction. So yeah, very interesting that you say that. I think that's just like, definitely like that's a number one rule for us,
Yeah, and I think it's like potentially losing the deal or killing the deal or whatever, but it's more like being proactive like that allows you to maintain trust.
Yep.
Right? There's no question if Danny's hiding anything because Danny's out front and putting it right on the table. Take it or leave it. This is what it is. And that's where people build trust, and that's how you build relationships long term, and how you get referrals and you get people to trust you. So I think that's great.
And I think the tough part too is like in any sales role too, like I feel like you're almost as a consumer taught to be like, well, don't trust the guy that works on commission, right? Be the first one to tell you. Obviously, we work on commission, but there's no hiding that.
Yeah, but you'd probably also be the same one to say don't trust most of them.
Well,
like,
maybe to some
not
degree.
to put people down, but I think it's like
it's calling
go
you
ahead,
out.
I'm sorry. No. I think, but again, and not to cut you off, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think for me, one of my biggest frustrations with the industry as a whole, and I don't think a lot of people talk about this, is the low barrier of entry and the lack of accountability that we hold each other to. And I'm just being honest. Like, you see things that are not right happen all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it is good advice to be skeptical and to question salespeople and to maybe not salespeople, anybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anybody who's not your family member you've known. But I think it's also important to trust. Once you find the people, you have to
To
trust,
trust them
and
wholeheartedly was
let-
kind of the point
Yeah.
I was getting
Yeah,
to.
sorry,
Yeah.
I know I kind of
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
no, I mean, you pretty much took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let
no,
them
but
be the experts in what they're the experts in.
Yeah, but I think when you say that, like that some people out there say, "Hey, don't trust somebody who works on commission." It's like I put it the other way around. A lot of times, when people come to me and I go like, "Hey, are you gonna trust someone that if I'm making $5,000 on in this deal, are you really gonna trust someone that's making $500? Are you gonna really believe that that person that's making $500 is going to make sure that they're on top of the deal to make sure that it gets to
Do
the
they care,
closing,
right?
Yeah.
or are you going to trust me where yes, I'm making this amount of money, but listen, you're getting paid for what you're doing, which I mean we talked about it last time. It's like there's so many people out there that have this business system that's basically based on just number of transactions,
Volume.
volume of
Yeah.
transactions, and then just little. And that's basically, hey, you come in and they put you in on top
Yeah,
of with the other one.
But
I
go
yeah.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was just going to say that similarly to that same point, the guys that are, lead driven, you're just a phone number. They're making 125 calls a day. So whether or not, they provide a good service to you doesn't mean as much to another individual that builds relationships. And if I don't treat somebody right that Pete put me in touch with, well, then forget that. I mean, they're also great friends too. So I'm losing even that much more. But, to that point, I think that there is a vested interest in acting in the best interest of other people to continue to grow your business.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
man, I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, we have a listing right now, and there's not a lot of time to get this thing sold, right? Like, there's not a lot of money in the pot. There's people like we have to hit this deadline, and we're moving and grooving, and we got the deal, and we got an offer that makes sense, and we're working through it and everything. And then we hit a road bump with some inspections that looks like it's going to maybe extend it, and from like when that first happened to like I'm thinking about that at night, you know what I mean, like when I'm going to bed and like waking up and like, okay, how can we make this deal work, how can we do it, like for somebody who's like just worried about transactions and just doing deals, like I mean I always say like it's a lot harder to care. It really is a lot harder to care, but it's worth it in the long run, in my opinion. But it's just like, to your point, it's like, do you want someone who's just churning and burning and just like, yeah, if the deal works, great. If not, like I'm still getting, I'm still going to Cabo or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
There's
So-
a reason why people pay for something. Like I was just on a listing appointment with one of my agent partners, and I was there just supporting because the person was also buying another property, so we wanted to do the numbers, and again, that's why we work as a team. And I put together an actual plan for the seller, and the conversation came back where like I guess the seller had already met with a listing agent that told him, look, you don't have to pay for the buyer's commission. And my point to the seller was like, look, you don't have to pay for the buyer commission. That's true. But the reality of the way that the business works is that you're probably going to get a lot less people coming in to see this house because you're not paying for that 1.5% or 2% or whatever it is. So, when you're not paying for something that everyone out there pays for, look, yes, you can save some money, but there's a good chance that you're actually going to lose a lot more money. And you need to incentivize.
I think my favorite thing to that is like, you didn't have to shower this morning, but it's probably a good idea that you did,
But
right?
you
It
did,
probably
yeah.
worked out in your best
Is
interest.
that, is
you
that, is that
showered
what
this morning.
Ash tells you?
Yeah.
Like,
But
yeah,
I-
you didn't have to shower, but I think it's a good
I
idea.
think it's a good idea.
What's that smell?
Yeah.
But no, I think that's great. I think, and it's, just because you have a choice doesn't mean it's the right choice. And that's, you trust the people to guide you through it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a question for both of you, and like, okay, so a seller comes to you to sell a house. Why should they go with you? That's for both of you, and
That's actually for you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think at the end of the day, it's not like, first of all, we don't take every listing. Like not every listing and listing agent and seller are a great fit. For us, I think, again, it's a lot of our, for me, our goal is always like at the end of the transaction, when they're loading up those last boxes and they're, the for sale sign is up and we're, doing their last goodbye, and the neighbor comes over and says, hey, we're thinking of selling. Like, how was it working with Pete and Ashley? Like, our goal is for them to be like, hands down, here's the phone number. Like, let me connect you right now. Like, don't even waste your time talking to anybody else. But we know that's not going to happen unless we deliver a great experience and exceed their expectations, right? So I think that kind of summarizes our philosophy just on business. I mean, I think it's easy to just kind of say, oh, well, we have the best photographer and we do home staging and we do this and we do that. Everybody can do that, right? But I also do think it goes back to us. We care.
Mhm.
We care what, like, we've pushed back. Like, okay, I'll give you an example. We have a listing coming up, and we have sellers who were really rushing to meet this deadline that we created, right? Because it's important that we at least set dates so that we have like a target to work towards. And so they're staging their house, they're getting ready, they're clearing stuff out, and they kind of reached out to me and they're like, to hit that date, when do we need to do photography? I'm like, Wednesday. They're like, okay, like I think we're good, blah blah blah. I could sense there was some tension, maybe, or maybe some frustration, or maybe uncertainty. And I knew how much stuff they had. So I was like, you know what, listen, I was like, would you feel better if I stopped by Monday just to kind of like see how things are going and make sure that we're on the right track? So we walked in, they did a lot. They really did a lot. And then we got upstairs and I was like, gently kind of said like, hey guys, like, would you guys want to take another week? Like, we can push the photographer back a week to make sure. And the seller came, like, as we were done, like they said yes, because they
Naturally.
did need
Yeah,
another
yeah.
week. And like, because what you're going to gain is far outweighs what you're going to lose by pushing it back a week, right? And so as we were walking down the stairs, the seller says to me, he's like, you have no idea how much weight you just took off my shoulders, right? And I think it's real easy for... It could have been easy for me to just say, oh, yeah, yep, no problem. We'll see you Wednesday. And then they're stressing out for the next couple of days, trying to hit this deadline that we don't have to hit. And then the photos don't come out as good. And then it just kind of snowballs from there. So I think really being like setting the expectations up from the beginning, right? And really making it perfectly clear, like, this is what we expect of you. And this is what you can expect from us. Like, we're going to handle X, Y, Z. We're going to do our best to make your life as easy as possible. And understanding that there are only so many things that we can control.
And honestly, that's what a real professional does, which is like you have to set the right expectations. I hate it when many people tell you, hey, well, this is what you're going to get. No one can guarantee you in this business this is what you're going to get. It's total BS.
And I think Pete brought up a good point in the beginning too. It's like they don't take all listings. Just like when you say, why should they work with the Kopecs? Like, Pete's like, I don't know if they should yet. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
you
we
guys
don't
yet.
know.
There could be really a clash of personalities. I mean, I think we're all pretty much chameleons where we could, match energy and go at the pace, to your point, with your clients. But there are some people that, like, hey, if they only want to work for a total list of 2% and they're leaving no budget for any marketing dollars to actually properly get the best dollar for the house, you might even say, hey, listen, I'm not really the guy for you.
That doesn't happen too often. We're usually a good fit for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
right.
But I think like what your point kind of touched on too, which I think is a really good point, is it's like, and we kind of touched on it earlier, it's like meeting people where they're at. Understanding some people need a lot of information, right? And they need to really understand everything, and you need to take the time with them. And, I've been in listing appointments for 2 hours and they are just at the point, that's how long they need to be comfortable. And there are other people that are like, if you're in my house for 2 hours, like, I'm going to scream. Like, there's no way I'm hiring you because I'm moving and grooving. Like, I just need you to be direct and to the point. And other people need that fluff and that comfort. So I think that's one of the things that we do well is kind of understanding where people are and what they need, and kind of meeting them where they're
It's
at.
having that intuition to, just knowing like, hey, this person is a,
Yeah.
Let's
you know,
move.
it's
High
like,
D.
let's
Yeah.
go. And then it's like this person just, you gotta calm them down,
Mm-hmm.
Personality types are huge, and being able to figure out how to exchange in a way that they're, most comfortable.
Yeah.
And I'll say one other thing that I think separates us maybe from some other people is we take ownership. Like if we make a mistake, if we feel like we could have done something better, like we'll be the first ones to admit it, and we'll come at you about it. Like you're not going to have to track us down. So again, that also doesn't like, we've got it down to a good system now, but I think just being able to be humble and just realize like, dude, like not everything is perfect all the time. And, but we're pretty good on that point.
This business is just full of, it's about knowing how to navigate mistakes and situations that come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And just having the right person by your side is going to make a huge difference. It's going to make the process so much easier, so much relaxed, so much more enjoyable. Whether that's when it comes to buying the house or selling, like you said, you want ownership. You actually like, look, if you're paying, if you're a seller and you're paying, you want somebody to tell you, hey, let me tell you how it is, right? I mean, the same reason why we go to a doctor, right? I mean, we never question doctors, right? I mean, some
should.
people do, but I know, but like some people
No,
just
but
kind of
yeah.
like go, I don't see many people going to a doctor and telling them, hey, like, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll say it afterwards, but nobody like really,
Yeah.
nowadays.
But a point
That would be like a whole different podcast, but
Yeah.
it's there are some things that you have to, that you have to show the client that, look, I know what I'm talking about, and yes, I'm going to make mistakes, but I think this is why we should do this. And if something comes up, maybe we'll change directions. But
you touched on something before that was really good, is having solutions to problems that you hope never occur.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest things, at least from a lender's perspective. I'm sure on the realtor front too, there's certain things that may come up, they may not, you hope they don't, but you're prepared for them. And I think that's the major difference is you never want to say, I don't know what to do because this happened. We thought of it up front. We hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, we navigate and push forward.
I mean, you saw me talking to Ray in the office. I have a client that just like out of nowhere, like he basically took ownership of the business where he was working, and that just completely changed.
That messes with your finances?
Yeah. So it was like, oh my God. And then we just went into contract and I was like, oh, crap, like, how am I going? This is going to be an issue, right? Well, it's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, you know what? This is the plan A. Let's look for a plan B. Let's look for a plan C. And that's something that we do very well, where it's like, I'll go to you and then, we go to Ray and then we sit down and then we start calling.
Okay.
Bottom line, we ended up finding somebody who's very good at VA loans. Who was able to like find a solution for that. And I mean, you're pretty good with VA loans. I do pretty good, but I'm not gonna lie myself. At least I'm not a super expert on it. We found this person, we got it done, and we're like, okay, now things are like.
Yeah, a guy at our company down in Virginia, like right out of Norfolk, where it's, the largest Navy base or whatever. So I think 80% of their business is all VA, telling us things that we never even knew were possible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And by the way, we got it. I mean, for those who know, we got it approved with a debt to income ratio, basically 70%.
Wow.
So it is like absolutely like, and we push, there's some, anyway, that will be like a whole different one.
Yeah, right. That's
But it goes back to actually like, look, you take accountability. You're like many people in that situation come and go like, oh, look, listen, too bad. You made a mistake. No. We're not in the business of declining loans.
Yep.
Okay, that's the number one thing that we always say to each other. So we're going to find a way to make it happen, and we found it.
Something else in that story that you just told too, I mean, the big theme was collaboration. Like you had the right team, and that was something that you spoke about earlier too, like having the right team in place to be able to problem solve and figure that kind of stuff out too. Like we have investor clients right now, the three of us, and they're trying to leverage a HELOC to buy something else on the property that they have. the three of us workshopped that for like 2 hours the
I
one
think we're
day.
still workshopping.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah.
just like to try to figure out the best solution because they're pretty much open to anything, which is great, but also tough because we're like, okay, well, if you don't have something specifically, we have to figure out the parameters that's going to be best for you then. So, and kind of give them options. But we like all together talked about that. We talked through scenarios. We workshopped that for a while
Yeah.
just to really try to get an idea of how this could work best for them. And I think if you don't have a team that cares and who has experience and able to, have these conversations and take the time, like you'd just be sitting on things that are just not ever going to work out. Like it's just not going to happen.
Going back to my point before, if you have
Mhm.
somebody that's only getting paid $500 for something
Right.
that, are they going to put together? Like we have spent like a couple of hours on this issue alone. And I mean, I'm probably going to spend a lot more time.
Mm.
If you were getting paid $500 that, after you have to pay taxes and all, you think that somebody's actually going to care about that? No, they're going to be like, look, this is your issue now. You go figure it out,
Yeah.
you know? And it's just so often. So that's what, that it's so important to know who you're working with. But now tell me, what are the goals for this team? What are you looking forward to do? Is there any special projects in
I was just about to ask
2025?
what's next.
Yeah, what's next? I
Special
mean,
projects is an interesting term.
it's like I mean, there's no.
We're always doing something. We're
Yeah.
always doing something. We're always trying to grow and trying to create a better experience for everybody we work with. Pete is king of ideas.
We touched on that already.
Yes,
can let
we
that go.
did. We did. But there will
Mostly good
always
ones.
be there will always be more. There will always be more coming, more that we're trying to do, more that we're trying to, we properties even we want to buy, businesses we want to start, just we kind of just, want to continue to grow.
Yeah, I think, and kind of why I wore this shirt today. It says, a life so amazing, it's almost unbelievable. I mean, I think that I had to read it because it's been a while since it's like backwards, but a life so amazing, it's almost unbelievable, which is a shout out to Jeff Glover ism. And kind of chasing that idea, right? So I think getting into the real estate world, I realized that I achieved something even just by getting into it and being able to pay my bills for a year. The first year is like a huge accomplishment. And I believe that most people, if not everybody, probably thinks about doing their own thing, setting their own way, not having to work for a boss at least like once a month. So for us, I think, and for me personally, like I've learned and grown so much just by being in the real estate world, being around other people, going to conferences, reading books, things that I never would have done if I stayed at my 9 to 5 W-2 job, like kind of thing. And I've met people, had experiences. So I think for me, it's like my ultimate dream and goal is to build a world big enough that other people can also achieve that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a real estate capacity, but if you stay small, you'll only be able to help so many people. The bigger you grow, the more people you can help. And that's my forever internal struggle of having all of these ideas, because when I think about them, I don't just think about how I can drive some Porsche down the road and look like, a big shot.
Yeah.
I think of how wide it could go, how many organizations and fundraisers we could have. And, every client event, we always do some sort of fundraiser. And I just think like, the amount of people that we have there are great, and we've been able to raise like a good amount of money and food and things like that. And I just think of like, what if we doubled it? What if we tripled it? Like, what if how many more people would we be able to help? Both in that capacity and helping them achieve a life so amazing, it's almost unbelievable. So that to me would probably be my unreal life, or is my unreal life. And I think we've already done it in certain ways, and it's like once you start doing it, you get addicted to it and you want to just keep doing it. So
Isn't it pretty cool too, like when you truly believe in yourself and you take the gamble on yourself, how you always win? Like
yeah,
almost every single time, like all the people that took the initiative to jump into something that's a full commission based role is one of the scariest things you'll ever do. You're like, what if I fail? It's like, all right, but what if you don't?
Right.
Right. And when you don't, like I now think of it too, like highs are high, lows are low, but I could never not do this now.
Yeah.
Like now I'm at the point where I was like, all right, like I'm still 2:30 on a Friday. We're here and I don't have to be clocking back in from a lunch break. It's the greatest feeling ever. The confidence that you get from investing in yourself.
I mean, it goes
Totally
both
agree.
ways, man. I can't sit here and say that like I'd never have down days or that I don't
Sure.
question myself or wonder if I can actually do it. But you have to have faith, and you just have to kind of just keep going for it. So
It's very easy to think about the negative all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's just very easy. It happens all the time with people buying a house, and it just like, you know, there's always gonna be someone out there who's gonna tell you, no, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this. And, you know, like I said, you know, if you believe in yourself, and, you know, like I even today, and I mentioned it before, but it's like it's all about momentum. It's amazing how like you start doing something, and then like, you know, you take massive action. This is like from Tony Robbins, but it's like you take massive action, and no matter how it is, even if it's bad, no matter what, like the moment that you get to do that like initial step, it's like, okay, boom, boom. It's like running. You start running, and then you start sweating, and then you're like, you know, you start like feeling good about it, and then you think you want to run a marathon. You know, it's like but with business and in life and buying a house, because that's the other thing too. Like there are so many people out there who just don't believe that they can or that they should buy a house, and it's like, you know, they hear, you know, nowadays you hear everything, right?
yeah.
And it's like, no, like, look, always just take the first step. Sit down with somebody. Let's look at your finances. Let's see where you are. It's that simple. And then from there, you're gonna be able to know. You're gonna have a pretty good idea whether this is a good something for you or something that's not for you.
And we talked about this a couple weeks ago too. Like buying a house is not, it's not a pass fail metric, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like if you take that first step and it ultimately the result is that you're not ready, it's not that you just can never buy a house. It's all right, now that we've identified what's wrong, let's focus on what we need to do now to actually get ready to buy, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year. But I think to your point, taking that first step, there's no harm in it. Right?
Yeah.
What do I always say? Like, nobody's going to force you to buy a house. Couldn't even if we wanted
Literally
to.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So taking that first step just to at least know. I think a lot of people, they'll have that fear of like, well, I don't know, you know, I'm afraid to know what I don't know. But it's not something you need
And
to
the same
overthink.
thing in business, like, you know, so many people think you know, as a real estate agent or as a loan officer, where it's like they think that, okay, as success is when I'm in the top 1%. I know if you're in the top 1%, I mean, you're killing it. You're like, it's a whole different life. You know, if you're just like, you know, if you're doing just enough, that's like success. If you're doing like, okay, this year, like you said, paying your bills for a whole year, you know,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, it is.
That's huge. I
Success
remember,
is
yeah,
subjective.
yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think, you know, I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say it, and it stuck with me, where it's like success is being able to put your head on the pillow every night and knowing that you're doing your best and you're doing the right thing. Right? If you're in the top 1% and you're ripping people off left and right, that's not what success looks like to me.
Sure.
yeah. It's there's yeah. I think the biggest point is just move.
Yeah. It's that Mamba mentality, man. It's just that pursuit of being the
R.I.P.
best version of
Just
yourself.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
what it's all
as
about.
we prepare to wrap up this, like, any travel plans, anything cool that you guys have, like personal, completely personal, anything going on?
We're going to Italy this year. Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Are you going to the?
Yeah.
I'll be there too.
So
Yeah.
basically,
So-
I'm not getting invited. I'm
Dan,
the
you want
only
to come
one
to Italy?
here.
Sorry, Danny.
Dan, you want to come to Italy this
We're
year?
going to
I
Italy.
would like to go to Italy. I probably can't, you know, partly because of my dog.
Don't even. It's got an 18-year-old dog.
Yeah,
Aw,
we have
get
a,
that.
we have
Yeah.
we love her. Don't get me wrong,
course.
but you know, we always joke around because it's like, you know, she's not doing good. She's about to, like, you know,
It gets hard at the end.
18
go
years is a blessing.
go to
Yes.
heaven, and all of a sudden we
Yeah.
mention it, and then boom, she's running like a puppy.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you
that's
know,
good.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
and then I realized
Not when he wants to travel the world.
yeah, so
well, yeah.
so we're
Now
not
we get that,
traveling.
though.
You know, she's probably gonna live another 30 years. You know,
Yeah.
we love her. We love her.
Of
Okay,
course.
we love dogs. Okay,
Of course.
You know, one
No.
other thing I do just kind of want to touch on before we were kind of talking a little bit before is something I've learned like through this process, through life, through things, is like there's things that can get you down, and you can look at the world, and like whether you're with maybe a business or something that you don't agree with, or you don't agree with something, like I've been kind of living by this mantra of like be the change that you want to see, right? It's really easy to get into like a funk and be like nothing's fair, not like it should run this way, right? That should happen this way. But if you want to see change, you have to go out and be the change. So I think just like setting that example and going out there and just knowing that you're you're living your true authentic life and you're staying true to yourself is one of the most important things that you can do. It doesn't matter if you own a house, if you're in the top 1%, if you drive a Porsche, you get to Italy, like all that matters is that you're staying true to yourself and you be the change that you want to see in the world in any aspect. I think that's a big deal.
Got to end on that, right?
Yeah.
Preach.
Damn, I had another quote, but anyway.
It's not going to compete with that. Save it for episode 4.
Yeah. I don't know, man. But anyway, you know what? I'll say it though.
Let's hear it.
Because it's my podcast, okay?
Yeah.
Podcast, my
You make
man.
the rules.
But everything's in like life is just about cycles. Like it's all because we just went through after the election, like right before the election, like rates went up and like everything just kind of stopped. And it's like you just go through cycles, and as people, the key is to make sure that you stay strong on when it's down, and then it's gonna go up. Whether it goes up immediately or but it's just like you need to just make sure. I mean, I haven't met anyone that's actually just straight up.
Never.
Never.
That's not how it
So,
works. Yeah.
but anyway, listen. I hope you guys enjoy Italy. When is it again?
October.
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 Oh,
Over her
nice.
birthday.
Yeah.
And where exactly?
So we're starting in Florence. We're hitting some areas in Tuscany, doing the wedding, and then we're going to Mallorca in Spain after.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's we
Pretty
gotta talk. Yeah,
excited.
got
Pretty
family in
excited.
Mallorca. Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna we'll talk about that
Yeah,
after.
yeah, that's we'll talk about that after, and in Florence too. Like that was actually
Oh.
a trip that I did with my wife.
Oh, really?
That's incredible.
Yeah, because I have a family in Sesto. I think it's called Sesto Fiorentino. But
Yeah.
if you're all around Tuscany is just amazing.
Yeah.
I can't-
Haven't traveled since 2018, like an actual vacation, but I can't
You're
wait
overdue.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
are
and we're
overdue.
just waiting for the kids to be more manageable.
For sure.
And the little one is
All in time.
Giving you a run
Yeah.
for your money right now.
yeah, I love into that, but yeah, it's anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
I really
Appreciate you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you. And with that, episode 3 is done.